Hi everyone, Teresa Gregorio here for the Knit Petite project, and this week's post goes over a little bit about beginning to identify some of our own Knit Petite fit issues. So in this case, I relied on a bunch of different sources to go over data about actually measuring yourself. I've listed only a few different lengths and circumferences. There are many others that you can absolutely take, of course, but just to move forward and get a few numbers to start looking at and comparing to charts next month, I wanted to prepare us for that eventuality. There's another part in this week's post also where I talk a little bit about different ways that you can be petite, all of which was based on this most recent study here that you can see. It was published in 2016, but I think they did the they did the research before then, a couple years before then, and it goes over comparing petite sizes and regular sizes, and ultimately to industry availability, so stuff that you have available to you as a petite person. Their findings are interesting, and there's a whole bunch of them, including that, surprise, surprise, the petite market isn't particularly well served, and it doesn't really reflect the number of petite women and the way that they are petite. We probably all already know that, considering we've all gone shopping in stores probably in our lifetimes. But they also go over some interesting information. They took measurements from I think just over 1,000 women from this thing called CYC USA. And CYC USA is relatively recent. They're using 3D body scanning technology, which a lot of the sizing people, like the professors and the academics, they seem pretty excited about because of the sorts of things that can solve and the way that you can move forward then and sort of create sizing systems that are more accurate and reflective of your particular population. But all of that is to say, this study took just over 1,000 women aged 18 to 35. Important to note the age range there, right? And it actually came up with 4 different body types, they're saying, for petite women. I'll show you this image here of the chart, or the images they came up with for those 4 different body types. And one is top petite, bottom petite, average petite, and plus petite. And all of those top, bottom, average, and plus, they're all based on comparing different numbers to other numbers. So all of this hinges on, first they use that data from CYC USA, but also they're comparing it to data that was it's updated, but it's essentially based on information that was gathered in the 30s or so, with a few tweaks here and there. So some of this information is a little older. Some of this information is flawed for a few other reasons we're going to get into next month. But all of it is to say that this information, the information that's out there in the stores, it's reflecting narrowness. It's not going to be broad. It's not going to talk about all of us. It's not going to be accurate for all of us. In fact, it's probably not accurate for any of us. But part of the Knit Petite project is going into that stuff and examining what it is and why it is that way. So for this paper, talking about top petite, bottom petite, average petite, and plus size petite, it's all, like I said, comparing the different measurements to each other. So the top petite people, for example, would have a shorter back waist length, which is one of the measurements that I encourage you to take earlier in this week's post. The bottom petite would then be people who have shorter lower measurements, or like your limbs would be shorter than perhaps your torso. Average is the limbs and torso are longer compared to petite measurements. And plus is there's more body mass than the average that they're referring to. Another important thing that I want to touch on, just so that everybody is clear within the Knit Petite project, that I am not here to tell you how to dress or to dictate taste or style to you. It's all about what you want to do, what your preference is. I want to encourage people dressing for their joy and creating garments for their joy, for things that make them happy, not with the idea in mind that you're covering flaws. And it makes me sad when people talk that way about clothing that they create, and that they want to make sure they take, attention away from this part of their body because it's a flaw. I mean, I understand absolutely why people feel that way. Believe me, I understand. But I want to do my best to encourage all of us to create for our joy and our passion. I am very passionate about body positivity, and I want that to be translated to you, and I want the Knit Petite project to be something that is a absolute safe space for everybody to think about what their body actually is and be okay with that, and to dress for the things that make you happy rather than go to the trouble of manufacturing, because this is what we do, we manufacture clothes for ourselves, right? And the idea with the Knit Petite project is presumably we're interested in making it fit our own style and tastes, and to demystify the system that is handed to us through our culture. And I don't want to be any part of telling people how they have to dress. So if you have this kind of body, then you would dress this way. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have any part of that. What I want to do is help all of us understand the system that we live under, and how clothing is manufactured for us, and the options that we are then handed, and how we can take that and use it to our own ends, so that we can say more about our own style and tastes and personality rather than be confined to a particular standard or box or option that is handed to us. I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. So there's a lot of note-taking, and there's a lot of buddy work that happens for this week's post, because it's a lot easier to take measurements of yourself with a bit of a friend, with hand from a friend. So I hope that you can get that. There's a few interesting tips. I rely heavily on that article that I showed you, but also information from Amy Herzog, who has done tons of research and has wonderful tools available for you for free to help you to measure yourself and perhaps build your own CustomFit sweater. That's her software, CustomFit. And also Ysolda Teague, an expert absolutely on sizing and fit for knitwear, in her book Little Red in the City, which is excellent for more than just patterns. It tells you a lot about how patterns are put together and how sizing systems work. It gives you a nice starter to understand some of that information. So I hope you're all still with me. Next month is going to bring some really interesting stuff. We're going to start looking at the history of sizing standards, which I find super interesting. And now that we will be armed with our own numbers and our own information, we can then compare it against those charts and see what those charts have to say, and why clothing maybe doesn't fit us when we buy it in the store, and why knitwear maybe isn't designed to fit us, and why certain things look certain ways when we put them on our bodies. So I hope you're looking forward to March, because I certainly am. The question for this week is, I'm asking you if perhaps you have ever used a sizing standard to create clothing before, for whatever that is, whether it's knitting or crochet or sewing. I'm wondering what sizing standard you used, what system you were referring to. And fun fact for this week, I mentioned Ysolda Teague a minute or so ago. She is a fit expert, and for years, many years ago, she had a sizing chart up for free on her website. Very kindly, she offered it for free, but then she retracted it a while ago, and for a number of years it was gone. It was difficult to find on the internet. Just earlier this month, she came out with a new one which has over 20 points. I think it's 23 different points of measurement. Fantastically researched. I've linked to that in the post as well, so go check that out too. It's kind of perfectly well timed for the Knit Petite project, because it's going to give us yet another resource to look at when we're talking about sizing systems, and particularly knitwear sizing systems, because I know perfectly well that a lot of knitwear designers look to Ysolda's sizing chart, and as well as the Craft Yarn Council's sizing charts that are offered there. So if you check the box below, you will see links to the post, as well as other important things that I've mentioned throughout this video. I hope that you are enjoying the Knit Petite project so far. Stay tuned for March, where we've got a lot more interesting information coming at you. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see ya.